I love video game music. There are so many examples from like the present day to a few years ago to closer to the beginning of the dawn of video games that I just adore the sound design, the music, everything that goes into that. I'm just really fond of. And somebody that I've been thinking about a lot recently is Koji Kondo. Koji Kondo was Nintendo's guy in the early years. We're talking about the composer and sound designer for the original Mario games, and actually to this day, he's continued to work on Mario games. And if you look at the credits for video games now, even like Nintendo games, you see more like teams of people working on these sorts of things. And I mean, at this juncture in history, that's the only sane way to do things. But in the early days, it was really just somebody like Koji Kondo sitting in a room coming up with songs and tracks and sounds to put in these games. He was the guy for Mario, and he also was for The Legend of Zelda when that came about. Koji Kondo was not shy about taking very direct influence from things. Love to recommend the Thomas Game Doc's videos on Koji Kondo's music, specifically his influences. What was it again? It was, this 80s song inspired Mario's music. Would definitely recommend watching that if you're interested in this. Just the way that kind of Japanese jazz fusion influenced the music from Mario, very, very clear. You can also see his influence in tracks from The Legend of Zelda. For the opening title music, Koji Kondo wasn't actually planning on writing a brand new piece. The plan was to use Bolero by Ravel, a orchestral piece. They were like, oh yeah, no, this fits really well, this'll work great, and that's in the public domain, so that should be fine. So the music was done. Koji Kondo had written the Overworld theme, the dungeon theme, all of the little jingles that go throughout, but just had this midied version of Ravel's Bolero for the title sequence, and everything was fine and dandy, things were ready to go.
By the way, the arrangement that you're listening to right now of Bolero is from the YouTube channel Nick Perrin Music. As near as I can tell, the Koji Kondo file doesn't exist anywhere online, but Nick Perrin made a really cool arrangement of it, and his stuff is really good, so you should check him out, and credit to him on this.
As explained in this interview with Takashi Tetsuka, Shigeru Miyamoto, and Koji Kondo, there was a little bit of an oversight there. Bolero, it turned out, actually wasn't in the public domain. they just kind of assumed it, which is so funny to me. Yeah, this giant established company also had this story early on of just like, oh yeah, let's just plan on using that. That's in the public domain, right? The game is going out, like, tomorrow. We need to start printing these cartridges. Koji Kondo, from there, just sat in a room and pulled an all-nighter and cranked out this tune. I knew I needed completely different music since Super Mario Bros. Is a completely different world, so I wasn't sure what to do. And The Legend of Zelda has an opening crawl, so I wondered about what should play during that too. For quite a while, it just played Ravel's Bolero. It really matched the opening crawl. You arranged it for the NES, right? Right. But immediately before finishing The Legend of Zelda, we learned it was still under copyright. In Japan, music usually enters the public domain 50 years after the passing of the composer. And Maurice Ravel, who wrote the music we were using for the opening crawl, lived a long time ago, so we thought we were safe. But we looked it up just to be safe and found out it had been something like 49 years and 11 months since Ravel's passing, and the copyright would run out in a month.
Hey, editing Tim again. So, what Miyamoto said here isn't actually correct. Maurice Ravel died at the end of 1937, The Legend of Zelda was released at the beginning of 1986. Don't mean to put Miyamoto on blast here, but I did come across this discrepancy. But for the record, it was still close.
But we didn't think we could wait that long, because the game was practically done. And we couldn't delay the release for the Family Computer Disk System. and that was supposed to launch at the same time. Like, The Legend of Zelda was going to be released alongside this edition for the Famicom, the NES. So I pulled an all-nighter to compose the opening song. He must have been in a really tight spot. Yeah, but it's just an arrangement of music used in the game. He reworked it to sound more like an intro. Still, that's impressive work for one night. I was desperate. It was really down to the wire. The essence of that type of tune is concentrated in the opening song, and above all, it suggests courage. So I think it's the perfect song to play when you set out on an adventure. So it's a good thing that Kondo-san spent all night composing it. For sure. If they waited just a little bit longer, if the timeline was just a little bit different, Bolero would have been in the public domain, and they would have just used that. But instead, Kondo had to come up with something completely new, and that intro tune, those first few notes, that ba-da-da-da-da-da, it wouldn't have happened. It might not be quite as iconic as do-do-do-do, but it still is like a huge piece of Zelda history, and I think it's just really fitting that one of Koji Kondo's most iconic sounds that he made was just something they did real quick, threw together, and could not have predicted the impact of it. You can see in this interview here, Koji Kondo talking about how honored he is and how surprised he is that people are still talking about his music so long after it was written. I get the impression that, while of course they took pride in their work, there wasn't a thought of like, oh, this is what I'm going to be known for. This is going to be an important piece of video game history. It's like, we need a track. We'll use Bolero, that's fine. Oh, we can't? Shoot, write something else. And the tune that they picked, you can hear it in this title theme, and you can hear it at the end of Breath of the Wild. Like, it is so much of a part of Zelda's history, and it wasn't even supposed to exist. And maybe that has something for us, where, like, hey, you might be just living your everyday life, making decisions, like maybe at work, maybe personal life, and you cannot know the impact that you're going to have, whether it's with interactions with other people or the work that you're doing, creative projects, who knows? You can't know your impact. And yeah, I don't know, I just thought it was a fun story, and